Hello again, and welcome back to Stories with me, Spongebob Squarepants. I'm here once again to hijack Jesse's channel because I think I'm the better storyteller. But don't you tell him that. After consulting a therapist and having Sandy perform one of her experiments to reverse whatever mental scarring had been done last time, I'm back and ready to read more police exploits from Reddit/talesfromthesquadcar. Let me know what you think of these stories in the comments, as well as any suggestions you may have that we may just use in a future installment. You better assume the position while we check you for contraband, 'cause we're getting started now. Our first story is titled, The Built-In Super Soaker. Gross. So in my state, the troopers are not only on highway patrol, but also the local cops in town that don't have their own police force. My station was a busy rural station of a few towns next to each other, none of which had their own police forces, so we were pretty much busy between medical calls, domestics, and just pure random crap that happens. Fast forward to the night of the call, medical at the local motel literally a mile from the station. As the junior guy late at night, I'm going. Now we've been to this motel before, normally for ODs or heart attacks, so our presence there is not abnormal. Only notes the dispatcher puts in the CAD is infection. Drive up, locate my victim, who is sitting outside of her room in a metal fold-up chair. Park maybe 10 feet away from her and step out of the car. Then it hits me. The smell. I've been to suicides in trailer parks, old people that are discovered weeks after they've passed in summertime, and way more vomit and poopy than I'd like to admit. Now we all know the smells are bad normally when we're in close quarters, but again, we're outside, and there's a breeze. Go up to our victim. Evening, ma'am. What seems to be the issue? Now, to say that she was straining the structural integrity of that chair with her girth is an understatement of the century. But being the keen observer, I noticed her shins are wrapped up on both legs from ankle to just below the knee in medical wrap. Well, it's these infections I have. They need to get looked at, she says. Of course they do, but not by me, I think. Okay, I say. The ambulance should be here shortly. Well, maybe you can take a peek. Before I can get the "no, that's not necessary" out of my mouth, we're enrolled and there are fist-sized holes that are white and green, probably 2 to 3 inches deep in her now exposed shins, and boy did the smell hit home. I think to myself, get it together, bro. Okay, ma'am, I say. Like I said, the ambulance crew should be here any minute. That's not the worst part, she says. Watch this! And before I can shout, "No!" she stands up and a stream of God knows what comes out like a fully pumped super soaker from the holes and shoots legitimately 12 to 15 feet. Every ounce of training, push-ups, and folding the damn bed corners pays off as thankfully the ambulance comes over to whisk her away. I run back to my car to take down the info I need. Surprisingly, I wasn't hungry when I got back for chow. TLDR. Obese woman called 911 for infections on her shins and decided to show off their squirting abilities. You know what? F this shit. I'm done. Fucking pus-filled water gun shins. For real? I'm out. You have fun with your 26 subscribers, Jesse.
Come on, dude. We've both seen the views. You gotta keep going. Remember how I saved you from being dried up? I found you on the beach and threw you in a bucket, and you said you'd never be able to repay me. Oh, I see how it is.
Really? You're gonna go there, you fucking piece of shit Disney princess looking hack job? Then rename the channel.
What?
You heard me. I want to be the star, and you can just stick to your subpar editing job you do in your bonus room.
That hurts. You knew just as well as I do it's a cutthroat world out there, and everybody's gotta find a hook, or else people just aren't interested. Fine. We'll rename the channel, never gonna happen. You have my word.
Moving on, our next story is called Jack and the Giant Dung Drop? Really? No matter who you are, what agency you work for, or your location on the globe, there are certain individuals that you keep running into. Everyone has at least one, that guy. No, not the D&D guy. Usually he's Reddit/Florida Man material. Sometimes he's a truly awful person, but most times he's not. He's probably got a history with your agency that goes back well beyond the start of your career and beyond the birth date of most Redditors. The first time you dealt with him, wide-eyed and surprised, you probably ran and told him one of the old salty vets on your shift who just chuckled and told you that, yep, that sounds like him. I was no exception, and my introduction to one of our local repeat customers was certainly memorable. We're gonna call him Jack, for no particular reason. Actually, that's not accurate. Jack is called Jack because he likes to drink. Jack especially liked to drink his namesake that came in square bottles with black labels, at least when he could afford to get his hands on it. More often than not, Jack would just make do with whatever bottom shelf plastic bottle swill he could get his hands on. But that's not really important. What is important is that this individual, like so many who enter the criminal justice system, probably had no business drinking. In this particular case, it was due to a combination of poor drunken behavior and some serious health issues. Jack really hadn't learned his lesson over the years, and his records were testament to that. Our current computerized system has only been in place for around 5 years, but the old digital records going back to the early 2000s were imported. In Jack's case, someone had painstakingly added all of his paper records to the system, and as a result, one can find system cautions with posting dates from the Reagan era. Jack came to me for the first time on a night just like any other. He arrived early in my shift, and being too drunk to be processed, went into the rubber room to sleep it off, where we could still keep an eye on him. Nothing notable happened for several hours as he slept peacefully, until about 3 a.m. when we sent another inebriated individual into the box to get his beauty rest. Jack didn't budge until we slammed the cell door closed, the loud metallic crash waking him from his intoxicated fog. A few minutes later, he appeared at the window, gently tapping for attention. I walked to the door where I could smell the booze coming off him even through the closed door.
Paper?
He queried through the inches-thick glass, steel, and foam. I must have given him a confused look because he repeated his question.
Paper? Toilet paper?
He threw his hands up in a confused gesture, acknowledging his accommodation's lack of sanitary products. I quickly returned with a roll and opened his tray slot, where he graciously accepted his prize. In my coffee-deprived 3 a.m. mind, however, I failed to consider one major flaw with this decision. You see, the rubber room is also what is referred to as a dry cell. That means no sink, and more importantly, no toilet. There's a hole in the floor with a grate over it, which is fine if you need to take a leak, but for solid waste disposal, it's not a great option. It'll work in a pinch, but I and the inmates prefer to pull people out to a normal cell for that need if the option is available. My sleepy, decaffeinated brain chose to ignore this fact though, and Jack either didn't mind or was still too intoxicated to care. I returned to post and went back to forcing myself to stay awake. My pseudo-slumber was interrupted about 20 minutes later by the trustee's loud exclamations.
Aw, damn! What are you doing, man? Don't do... Oh, hell no!
I looked up to see the pained expression on his face.
Old boy's taking a shit in the rubber cell, man!
I craned my neck to see Jack hunched over, looking behind him at his girthy production. Worse still, he had missed the hole in the floor by a good 2 or 3 feet. He turned back to me and shrugged, pulling up his pants that really hadn't managed to get down in the first place. Suddenly, my nose was assaulted by the worst smell imaginable. I don't know what Jack had been eating on the outside, but it produced an odor that burned my nose and made my eyes water. I ran to the door and slammed the tray slot shut, but it was too late. The smell had escaped. My coworkers started to complain, and a female that was being processed gasped and gagged. My vision went blurry as my eyes filled with tears. At that moment, I would have preferred to have a face full of OC than to have to smell this hellish scent. It also probably would have had less effect. As other inmates and officers scrambled to get near a ventilation source, I made a mad dash back to my post. You know how when stuff really goes wrong in the hospital, they rub the peppermint oil on a cold mask so that's all you smell? We don't really have that. The best I could come up with was some hand sanitizer, which I smeared under my nose in the hope that it might clear the air of the noxious odor. My nose was dry and cracked at the corners because I had been fighting off a cold, and the alcohol stung and burned my skin. I couldn't care less because it offered a brief respite from smelling something that was more at home in a sewage pipe than anywhere else. I turned to see the trustee at the cell door, holding his nose and waving frantically to get Jack's attention.
Get it in the hole, man! You gotta get it in the hole!
He frantically pushed the flush button on the exterior of the cell, hoping to encourage Jack to get the hint. He turned to me and shook his head.
Man, he's gotta get it all in the hole. He's gotta push it or something.
He turned back briefly before exclaiming again and walking away in disgust.
Aw, hell nah! Not like that, cuz! Nasty ass, goddamn!
He trailed off as he went to fetch cleaning supplies, drawing the attention of the sergeant, who was coming to investigate the rancid odor.
What's he doing, Muff Huffer?
Prompted by the Sarge, I nervously approached the door and peered in the window. What I saw was from a horror film. A 3-foot-long, 1-foot-wide smear lay across the floor of the rubber room. The offending substance was piled haphazardly on top of the grate, mixed with toilet paper. I don't know why Jack had bothered to ask for the roll, however, because he had applied most of the fecal matter to himself. Caked up to both elbows in his own excrement, it dotted his face and hair where he scratched himself. There was a trail down the back of his dirty sweatpants and at the bottom of his threadbare thermal shirt. He looked up at me with shock and indignance and shrugged before asking,
What? It's fine.
I shook my head and sighed. Jack, you gotta clean up a little, bud. He scoffed.
I'm fine. I'm just in here, and I want to go back to sleep.
I reached for my keys and told him, Nah, man, you gotta get cleaned up. I'm not trying to leave you in there all covered in poop, man. Jack shook his head and waved his hands dismissively.
Nah, I just want to stay in here. It's fine.
He stood and turned away. Then, to my ultimate horror and revulsion, he dropped his pants, squatted, and did it again! Same spot! Even more poop, while I watched. I still have nightmares. Dirty deed done for the second time. I couldn't tear myself away. It was like watching a bad car accident, when you know you shouldn't look, but you're so astounded by the violation of the laws of nature that's happening right in front of you that you're almost compelled to keep watching. Bare ass still hanging out, Jack stood and turned, then bent over and smeared his second set of turds across the floor and began to smash them through the grate with his bare hands. I swore and knocked on the window. Dude, at least use toilet paper. Jack scoffed and waved his hands again, inadvertently flinging minuscule poop flecks around the cell. This time, his production was looser and less solid, more wet sand than modeling clay like the first one. I screamed silently and turned to the sergeant. I looked apologetically at her and weakly offered, He just did it again. Sarge looked at me quizzically. He pooped on the floor a second time, Sarge. He smeared it all over himself in the damn floor. I don't know what to say. Sarge looked blankly at me and blinked a few times.
Well, I guess we gotta get him out and clean him up.
The next few minutes were a haze. The unfortunate duty of dressing Jack in his jail clothes fell to me, and after being given several minutes in a bathroom to clean himself up, I had to strip search Jack as part of the booking process. It was here that I discovered he didn't do as good a job as he thought he did, and despite taking a shower later that night, Jack's case of mud butt persisted. I did my best to block those scenes out of my memory, but Jack had left a memento behind. The raw odor of his vile expulsion. Despite the trustee, in a full hazmat suit no less, throwing every cleaning product in our arsenal at the cell, the smell lingered for hours! It also spread to our new temporary drunk tank cell, where Jack and his roommate, who slept through the whole thing, had to be moved. The smell hung around for so long and was so bad that it even eventually permeated the virtually sealed control box next to my post, who called me about an hour later, asking if the sewer line was backed up again. Someone took pity on me and came up with a can of Febreze, which I distinctly remember spraying non-stop until the can was empty. The remaining few hours of my shift passed without further incident, but the damage was done. Scared and disturbed, I went home that morning with the image of Jack taking his second deuce burned into my brain. A few days later, I regaled a sergeant on another shift with my harrowing tale of Jack and the giant dung drop, expecting shock, horror, and revulsion. I was instead surprised that he simply gently nodded at the end of the story.
Yup,
He said to me.
that sounds like him all right.
Huh, that actually wasn't as bad as I thought. Jesse, is this how it feels to be desensitized?
Yes it is, Square Dude. The real world is nothing like the world you know at Nickelodeon.
Aye. Wow, what a kick in my square ass. You hear that, folks? I've been living a lie. Patrick couldn't stomach these kinds of doses of pure reality.
You're really coming through for me, Spongebob. I just found out I might be losing my job, and these people, they crave entertainment, feed on it. You're my golden yellow ticket to a silver play button that I can plaster on my wall and swim around in $100 bills.
Jesse, you're a creep and you need to talk to someone about it. You need professional help.
Money, 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 money.
Anyways,
Yay!
that's about all the time we have for
Money!
today,
Everybody's loving
ladies
the
and
money.
gentlemen.
Yay!
Thanks again for tuning in with me,
Money.
Spongebob Squarepants, and that moron in the back. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content, and click another video of ours on the screen. I swear, jackass, I'm calling the Nut House now to come and take your ass away. We'll catch you in the next one.